So this story is shaping up to be very interesting, heavily contested, a back and forth battle between very strong ideologies. Samura is going down this path whether people like it or not, and he's going to be an incredibly difficult opponent. And we've only seen portions, mere fractions of what he's actually capable of. This is Al that was controlling the war, and realistically so far, the only thing that might compete with him on his level is Magatsumi. However, I do have my concerns. They're watery, they're all too concrete, and obviously a lot of things can change. But I would be lying if I said that I was fully sold on some of these ideas. So let's talk about it. I understand this is Chihiro's story. He is the main character. He is the one that's going to get the main amount of screen time. It's him. It's all about him. I get that. However, I truly do wish that more people would get more time to shine. And this is a sentiment that I've had growing for a little bit now. Every fight, every interaction, every amount of importance has fully centered around Chihiro and the rotating things orbiting around him, which makes sense. But truly, I would eventually like to see other characters get their own fights. Not ones centered around Chihiro, but just their own fights. Now, it is early in the story. We only have 60 chapters. A lot of this can change over time, of course, but we're running out of characters. A lot of these characters can't really compete. So while Chihiro is getting more information, more development, more training, you get someone like Hakuri that's just in the worst position imaginable. Remember, he has a whole separate ability called Isao from his transportation storehouse thing. Unfortunately, now he's just in a really bad position. He can't even use his sorcery like that, so I don't expect him to fight. But when you have people like Hiyuki, for example, who is incredibly strong, and I would love to see her have a fight, and I pray that we do eventually. We also have Shiba, perhaps his army. What I'm saying is that as much as I love Chihiro as a character, I would also love to see other people get just small fractions of time to shine as well. Not alongside him, but separated. And perhaps a little bit down the line, we will eventually get it. I'm not trying to sound greedy. I'm grateful for what we have, what we're getting. I still think it's very well done. I would just like to diversify that portfolio just a little bit, just a fraction. What does make me laugh is the Kagurabachi in here. They don't really have a good understanding on how to answer things or how to control things or how to really progress. Does that make sense? Seeing how they speak to each other back and forth, it's just a battle of questions. There's no real acknowledgement or crafting of a situation, potential how to deal with it. It's more like perhaps this or perhaps that. These are people that are meant to police and control powerful objects, but yet when I see them talking to each other, my confidence kind of just dwindles drastically. Samura is more powerful than the Hishaku. Samura is confident he can invade and take out the Kagurabachi, which means that he's confident that he could go toe-to-toe with someone like Shiba. You'd probably ask, what could they even do? How much can they truly change? Maybe being a little bit more proactive? Maybe putting more measures in? Maybe trying to hide away or protect certain elements? You're relying on very circumstantial situations to get the job done. And that circumstantial situation is Chihiro trying to fight like the ninjas, which I think is a really cool idea. It's something that I talked about recently. Perhaps relying solely on that isn't the best idea. You moved one of the other sword bearers and his restaurant and trying to hide everything, and that will buy you some time, but eventually Samura and the Hishaku are coming. I think what proves a little bit of their vulnerability is how quick they jump to relying on Shinichi, Magatsumi. Clearly that option is out the window, but you also know that Samura is coming for Magatsumi, so there is a level of confidence that Samura has due to his experience, due to his power, that puts him on a level far beyond what the Kagurabachi is currently even trying to operate at. So what could be done? I don't know. To be fair though, the answers are difficult. There's no good way to go about this. Maybe trying to rely on Shiba would probably be your best bet. I'd be communicating with him, look, get some work done. You don't work for us, but we need you right now. You are considered one of the strongest sorcerers. We're gonna need you for this fight. Just a bit of a thought. I do really like the back and forth conversation between Chihiro and Shiba. I think there's a lot of characterization for both of them, even if Shiba is kind of just answering questions and not really speaking all too much. There's still a big unknown in the air when it comes to the quote-unquote sins of the war, which Shiba looked close in explaining, but is still kind of biting his tongue on. I'm curious on what that is and how that changes the perspective of perhaps Chihiro, but also us as readers. We only know fragments of the war, bits and pieces from very different perspectives, yet we know that now there is something a lot more sinister. And it is in relation to Shinichi or Magatsumi, but we don't know how big that scales. Did Magatsumi devour hundreds of innocent people? Did they sacrifice people to create the sword? Is the person that you gave the sword to a war criminal or someone super innocent that you burdened them with that sword and basically put them in hell? What sins would be so egregious that Samura wants to wipe everyone off that is even slightly connected to it? And why is Shiba directly a part of this? Something funny did happen though. Chihiro died, and not metaphorically. Physically, his body died. His heart stopped beating, which means that his contract with Enten also broke. This is an idea I brought up when the whole Samura stuff was happening, that perhaps one of the better options to get rid of Uraha and to break his contract is to kill him and then revive him. We now know that this is a possibility, so you can break sword contracts, and I will say certain contracts in quotations, by killing the user and quickly reviving them. However, there's two different reasonings for this. On one hand, Shiba thinks that Samura might have done it deliberately to not only show Shiba that he failed to protect Chihiro, but also as a warning to Chihiro that if you continue down this line, I will have to fight and kill you. A double warning. But then that brings up a question. Did Samura heal Chihiro 7 to 8 minutes after his death? Is that part of his repertoire of abilities? But then I was thinking, wouldn't it be more interesting if somehow Enten has kind of like a stopgate, a way to kind of restart the user's heart again and try and keep them alive? When you're dead, the sword contract disappears, so it might be more of a latent ability that happens while you're using the sword, and for Enten's case, maybe a clause for when it disconnects. The only way that we know how a sword can be disconnected is through death. So it'd be very interesting if Chihiro's father kind of designed the sword to be like, look, while you're using this sword, as soon as you die, the final clause of this contract, if it was like a physical page, would be like, its last request will be to actively try to revive you. That means you could have a second chance of wielding the sword again if you get back on time. Two different ideas. Samura healing, Enten latent ability. I think both are very interesting. I would much rather see Enten's kind of approach, just because that opens up a very interesting game of cat and mouse with what Shinichi or Magatsumi could represent, because I do think there is perhaps a level of immortality for Magatsumi. It may be soft immortality, it may be something more parasitic where it has to continuously feed, where you can potentially jump bodies, or to sustain and keep yourself alive by feasting, like a vampire, like a parasite. Time to talk about Uraha. I don't know if he's dead or not. Hogazono is tiptoeing around facts. Is he dead? Is he not? We don't know. He was supposedly confirmed dead, yet we haven't seen a body, and for some reason, Shiba, who is very knowledgeable, has a lot of connections, cannot get information on Uraha's confirmation or death. Now, Uraha is within the morgue, currently getting an autopsy, but I do want to point out that Chihiro took 7 minutes to revive, which is relatively long for someone that's been dead. This might be different for Uraha. I don't know how long they've been disconnected or apart, but there is a chance that if Samura was trying to play this game of disconnecting people from their swords by killing them just kind of slightly, which is funny when you put it like that, there's a chance he's trying to save Samura as well by disconnecting him from that sword. At the end of it, we don't know, and Hogazono is being flexible with the idea. The fact that he's still even playing on it gives a portion of implication that Uraha is still alive. But why, you might ask? Maybe to use him as a weapon, to keep him away completely under the radar, that no information could leak, that he too could try and bait out Samura alongside Chihiro and the ninjas. It'd be a tall task, but one that would be relatively valuable. which this leads to the fighting style. The only way that we can even get close to samura is by being completely undetected. That means you have to cancel out your bloodlust, you have to move a certain way, you have to smell a certain way, you have to be completely blind to all of this man's senses, which includes the abilities of his sword to a degree. That means you also can't wield a sword properly until you get close, where Uraha could come in handy just by wielding a normal sword, but also the drawing style itself is indicative to that. The reason why Samura and Uraha's drawing style is so impressive and kind of even works against Samura's senses is that it is a last minute draw. You're not wielding your sword naturally, you pull out that sword right at the end to attack. Uraha with an enchanted blade, if he could get his back from Hirohiko or another one, would be very difficult to stop with his style and hiding in plain sight. In saying that, the ninjas are going to teach Chihiro how to fight this way, and you get a really cool last panel of all of them joined together, suited up and ready to go. I like this. I think it's cool. As much as I wish other characters would get their time to shine, seeing Chihiro front and center with these ninjas is amazing. Do I think a lot of them are going to die? More than likely. But I do think what's important is Chihiro learning how to fight different ways. I always forget that Chihiro isn't a trained swordsman, he's a smith. He's someone that makes swords. He never really trained in the sword style to that degree. He's probably only got a couple of years under his belt. So the more that he can learn from actual professionals, the more that he can learn from different people, the more that he can incorporate into his own sword style. And when you're going up against someone like Samura, who has mastered a sword style and has a ton of experience and a very powerful enchanted blade to boot, you need everything at your disposal. I don't think it's going to be as simple as hiding in plain sight, which is what these ninjas are designed for, but it's a start and a really, really good one.